The next generation of Connecticut women leaders will address challenges and navigate a world many of us could not even begin to imagine when we began our careers. Let's hear from one of those next generation leaders.
Women make up half of our population, but only 19% of C-suite executives are women, and only 3% are women of color. As a young Indian American woman, my very identity has become a hurdle that I have to overcome, and I am not alone. We have a voice, we need to be empowered to use it, and it's time that people listened.
Good morning, I'm Sapna Raghavan, Miss Connecticut 2021. I graduated from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in the class of 2020, and I now work full-time as a management consultant alongside my job as Miss Connecticut. I'm a first-generation Indian American, and I come from a small business family here in Connecticut. Growing up watching my mom succeed as a woman in business, tackling every entrepreneurial endeavor that came her way, empowered me to view the world without limitations based on my gender. For those of you who may not know, Miss Connecticut serves as the state representative for the Miss America organization, the largest scholarship provider for women in the country. It's Miss America's mission to prepare great women for the world, but more importantly, prepare the world for great women. I was honored to receive over $10,000 in scholarships as part of my involvement thus far, which paid for my education but further amplified my voice. More importantly, I became part of a group of like-minded women who are looking to amplify other voices of other women. Throughout my year as Miss Connecticut, I will be promoting the importance of embracing diversity, overcoming adversities. Like most women, leading hasn't always come easy to me. It was when I started my first corporate job that I realized how unconsciously I was falling into the expectations of what it means to be a woman of color in business. From the way I would write my emails, "Sorry to bother you," or "I just wanted to ask," to the way I would carry myself in presentations, not too assertive but not too bubbly, I found myself apologizing for every corner just for doing my job. These are just a few examples of how we as women relinquish our seat at the table rather than rise above systemic bias. I've been fortunate to build a network of incredible women leaders who have helped me grow my voice, and I'm keen on paying that forward. Diversity brings unique perspectives and experiences to create greater value and solve problems holistically. Today, I'm honored to introduce you to two incredible female leaders who have overcome adversities and have risen to new heights as the pinnacles of the Connecticut business community and role models for fellow women. Leander Dolphin is a highly regarded litigator working primarily at the intersection of education and employment issues, aiming to achieve equity for all through empathy, advocacy, and action. She works tirelessly to not only provide legal aid and insight, but also provides collaborative support to cultivate a positive, equitable environment for all in Connecticut. Sylla-Dixon is a champion of equity, diversity, and inclusion as the Chief Diversity Officer of Raytheon Technologies, alongside her efforts across several philanthropic endeavors. She supports organizations through a variety of initiatives and provides opportunities for all. Today is about listening and learning, and even unlearning some of the things we have known to be true, and we are fortunate to have these two women to offer their guidance.
Thank you, Sapna. I look forward to seeing where your life's journeys take you. Sylla-Dixon and Leander Dolphin. Good morning to both of you. Marie, let's begin with you. Why did Raytheon Technologies hire a Chief Diversity Officer?
So first of all, Beatrice, I just want to say good morning to everyone. And I also want to just thank CBIA for even holding this discussion. And it is truly an honor to be having this discussion with Leander, who is an amazing leader. So I'm just very humbled to be here. And Sapna, thank you for what you're doing and using your platform as well. So I think when we think about the question, I first want to start off with just some data first. Nearly 3 million women have left the workforce over the past year during the pandemic and are facing burnout. There are 33 women Fortune 500 CEOs. There are only 4 Black Fortune 500 CEOs and only 11 Latino Fortune 500 CEOs. Also, one data stat as well, 1 in 5 senior leaders in corporate America is women, and 1 in 25 is a woman of color. So when we talk about, why the need for having a chief diversity officer, the data really tells the story. And for Raytheon Technologies, in the aftermath of, we had a historic merger, we had the pandemic that happened, and then the murder of George Floyd, which really led to having courageous conversations internally with our employees and with our leader. And because of that, our leader, Greg Hayes, along with the board of directors, made a commitment to elevating diversity, equity, inclusion, and making it a business imperative. And so by making it a business imperative, they felt that it was important to have someone come and lead that for the enterprise and to have a seat at the table. So the role in the diversity, equity, inclusion has really been elevated, and we are accelerating that. And so it is so important to have a chief diversity, equity, and inclusion officer at the table in a company to show that it really is a business imperative and that it really is one that we are looking at holistically across the enterprise. The other thing that I want to talk about when we talk about a chief diversity officer and diversity, equity, inclusion in the organization is we really have D&I. When we talk about it, it's about our employees, it's about our customers, it's about the communities that we serve. And we know that diversity fuels innovation, and that innovation is fueled by diversity of backgrounds, diversity of perspectives, ideas, and thoughts. We know that companies and organizations that have more women in leadership are also, do much better when it comes to bottom line and market growth. We've seen the data over and over again. And we know that more than ever, corporate America, we are made for this moment. And this is the moment that we have to step up, and we have to make sure that DE&I really is at the forefront right now, and that we have that opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leander for this as well.
Oh, Marie, that's exactly right. Everything you said resonated with me, and it really is the moment, right? And we have, in both of our industries, been working on diversity, equity, inclusion for years. And I think in the last year, it feels like a watershed moment. It feels like there is change happening every day. And it is because companies like Raytheon are appointing, people like you with passion, with the data to back up the good business of diversity, equity, inclusion, and the business imperative. And I'm honored to be here today to talk with you, to talk with Beatrice, and to talk with those of you who are listening in about this important topic.
I can totally be impressed about where you guys have made it. I know it is a hard path there, and I'm sure people really would like to know a little more about that. So Leander, you and Shipman and Goodwin broke a lot of ground this year. You're women of color, and you're one of the people co-leading one of the state's leading law firms. And we know that law as an industry is also a place that is working through inclusion and diversity. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to that position?
Oh, thank you for that, Beatrice. I, started my legal career at Shipman and Goodwin. I was recruited at Howard University School of Law. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's important later. But I started at Shipman in August of 2004. I was a member of a class of 6 women. So there were 5 other women in my class. I'm proud to say that 3 of us still remain 17 years later. 2 of us left and were recruited back to the firm, which is another point that I think will be important as we talk about the commitment that law firms, that businesses need to have when they are recruiting women and when they're recruiting people of color. I started at Shipman in the litigation and employment law groups. I have since transitioned to the school law group. I still do a fair amount of employment work. And I was tapped very early on by leaders in the firm as someone who had leadership qualities. They wanted to hear my voice. And I was asked to join the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. That's what it was called at the time. It has since been renamed, and Marie will appreciate this, to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, which is an important distinction between just diversity, which is really just about numbers, and inclusion, which is about being in the room, but equity, which is about making sure that we're being fair in all of our decision making. So diversity, equity, inclusion as a committee really makes a difference in our workplace. So I was elected to the partnership a few years later. I was the first Black woman to do so at the time. I'm pleased to say that we have at least one other, my partner, LaTonya Williams, and I'm looking forward to bringing more along the way. And then a few years after I was elected to be a partner, I was elected to the management committee, which is the governing body of the law firm. And at the time, I was the youngest on the management committee, and I was one of 2 women. I am pleased, and this is important because it's about how quickly the change needs to happen so that someone like me ends up leading the firm, right? So you get there, you're working hard, you're identified as someone who has leadership abilities and potential. You are asked to join the dance. You are asked to lead in certain capacities. You are elected, which shows that your partners believe in you and they want you to lead them. And within 3 years, I was elected to be co-managing partner of the firm with my co-managing partners, Kent Nevins and Jim Ruggieri. So that's been the arc of my career at Shipman. You know, my career and my journey has been marked by support and mentorship and sponsorship at every stage of my career. You know, people along the way really took an interest in me, they invested in me, they poured into me. And in response, I was able to show up and I was able to, you know, I always say I'm very grateful to those women who came before me at the firm, who served on the management committee as the only. And now we're 50% on the management committee are women, and we're being led by a woman of color. That's about incremental change and meaningful change. So I think I'd like to add, and this is important as well, that I am the beneficiary of having a pretty small but mighty board of directors. Those are the people in my life who really, you know, pour into me. They ask me tough questions. They push me to do things that I wouldn't ordinarily do. They are good sounding boards. They give me good feedback. And they ask me to do it afraid. And they push me to, like I said, to do things that I wouldn't have otherwise done. So I have found that to be the steady engine for me, you know, in addition to the sponsorship and the mentorship along the way, that there are, a small group of people, mostly women, but not only women, who I go to when I am unsure or when I am reacting, when I am in need of some good, wise counsel. These are people who know me and they know my strengths, they know my weaknesses, they know my industry, and they know what I need to do to kind of be successful in the area. So I hope that answers your question, Beatrice.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, talking about that board of directors, totally agree. Those were the people I called this morning before I came here. So they're there cheering for me. So, Mary, you kind of talk, you know, pretty closely, very strong about how can corporations do advance diversity, equity, and inclusion? What do they need to do? And what I got out of that is you got to put it in the forefront, correct? You have to be very, very mindful and have intent in saying this is what we're going to do and we're going to align resources behind that. But with that, are there 2-3 things that we can really highlight that will get our corporations to really move forward in these important topics?
That's a great question. Corporations really have a huge opportunity right now to leverage their scale, their platform, their people to really make systemic change and generational change. And internally and externally, there are actions that corporations can do. So Raytheon Technologies, by making the commitment, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our initiatives. I mean, one of the first commitments that we have made with one of our legacy companies that is now part of the new company is we have something called Paradigm for Parity, where we have made a commitment to get to parity of women leaders by 2030. We also have made a commitment to double the number of people of color at the senior level, executive level, management level. And that's important for, our team members, our employees to see leaders that look like them. It's important for us to make sure that our workforce is reflective of what we are, which is a global company, and it's reflective of the communities that we serve and live in. We also take a holistic view when it comes to D&I, and in doing that and in leveraging our platform, our scale, our purchasing power, which is what corporate America can do in order to show responsible leadership, especially right now, and stepping up and trying to help move the needle. So what we've done is we are looking at this we're calling it our pillars for action. So our workforce diversity being a huge one, because we know that our lifeblood of our enterprise, especially for our 4 business units, really is our people who are our innovators. And we want to make sure that we're investing in our people, that we're growing diversity in terms of the pipeline for underrepresented innovators in terms of engineering and STEM, so getting more women, more people of color into those fields. But we also want to leverage our platform when it comes to issues like supplier diversity. I mean, in the state of Connecticut alone, we spend about $2 billion annually with local suppliers. So it's important that, when we're doing this investment, that we also invest in women-owned businesses, diverse-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses, because we know that these are the companies that are, serving, putting jobs back into underserved communities. It also has an economic impact. We also, in viewing our pillars for action, are leveraging our platform when it comes to public policy. So weighing in on education equity issues, weighing in on STEM equity issues when it comes to weighing in at the federal or the state and local level when it comes to public policy. We know that especially right now, our Black and brown children have been highly impacted because of COVID. And so it's important that issues like education equity are addressed and that we're speaking up, because these are our future innovators. These are our future workers. They are going to help all companies, corporations in the future when it comes to issues of competitiveness and innovation. We also, on the community engagement side, we announced an initiative called Connect Up, where we've made a commitment to invest $500 million over 10 years to invest in different initiatives that help grow that pipeline. So one of the initiatives that we've been doing is Girls Who Code. We're a big sponsor of Girls Who Code in the Connecticut chapter, and getting more girls to go into the engineering and the computer science field. That is something that I personally am very passionate about. I am the daughter of a mother who was a former a computer scientist who went into that field in 1960 when there were no women and were no Black women, who ironically went into the aerospace industry herself, who now has a daughter sitting at the table as a chief diversity officer, helping to drive diversity, equity, inclusion for the workers who and the team members who were just like my mom. And so, corporate America really does have a huge role to play and really can help in accelerating that change, because now more than ever, we are at a movement and we now all need to be a part of driving change so that we really can have lasting and sustainable and long-term impact so that future generations don't have to go through these challenges that we're going through today.
Well, thank you for that. And I totally can relate to your comments on getting more women and more children of Black and color and brown into our pipeline, correct? So as an engineer, 30 years ago when I graduated, there were 10% women. And basically, of those women, I was the only one from a different background. Then I went to my daughter's graduation at UConn. She's a computer scientist. Same numbers. That's a problem. That is a big problem. And we need to really work together, as you said, to really get that pipeline, that access, and that equity to our populations, because we are looking at the future of this country, particularly in areas that are non-traditionally female and not traditionally of people of color. So with that in mind, Leander, what can a business do to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion? And how does the leadership model at Shipman and Goodwin help drive DE&I engagement at the firm?
Well, when I think of how Shipman ended up with its first Black woman managing partner in 2021, I think back to 2004 when they brought in 6 women and they invested in us so much so, as I mentioned, that when 2 of us left for different reasons, they pursued us so that we could come back. That meant they needed to have a place that was welcoming, that wanted us to be in the room. They've, in the time that I've been there, both of my partners who started with me are leading, big practice groups at the firm. They are, part of the fabric of the firm all these years later. And so it starts with identifying, talented people who might be underrepresented, women of color, people of color, inviting them in, and then trying to do whatever you can to retain them, because that's an issue as well. That, as we become more competitive as a nation, as an industry, people move around quite a bit. And so retention is key. Once you get them in the door, what are you going to do to kind of keep people with your firm, with your company? And the way you do that is you offer them true equity. You offer them, opportunity. You offer them training and development. So what companies can do is to not only say that they value diversity, but to live it, right? They have to be intentional, like you said, Beatrice. And as Marie talked about the amazing initiatives that Raytheon are doing, one thing that has happened in the last few years at the firm, at Shipman, was our adoption of the Mansfield Rule. And for those of you who don't know, the Mansfield Rule is a diversity lab project that is, the goal of the Mansfield Rule is to diversify law firms. And it requires law firms to consider underrepresented lawyers at every stage of the firm, whether that is at the hiring stage, the promotion stage, the selection for leadership stages. It requires, us to look at who's going to be on the most important committees at the firm, the management committee, the compensation committee, who's making the decisions, who's really leading that. And when you sign up for Mansfield, you are held accountable to doing that. And being accountable means that you get results, because as Marie knows, that what gets measured gets done. Right? And we have found that to be very, very helpful for us over the last several years. In fact, we've achieved Mansfield Plus certification in the latest iteration because we've exceeded our goals in a number of areas, particularly with respect to women. What we need is to have training on how to push implicit biases outside of the room where it happens, right? So that when people are making decisions about pay, about promotion, about evaluation, that we are not relying on stereotypes or other biases that are getting in the way of giving equity and equitable opportunities to other folks in the firm, especially underrepresented people. And when we talk about providing equitable opportunities for underrepresented lawyers, the result is better because it means that we are being fair to everyone. Right? It means that we've invited everyone to have the same shot at the opportunities. We need to ask ourselves the tough questions. Why have we failed in reaching our goals with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Where have we been successful and where we've hit some obstacles? And companies that do that get the better results. They end up with a more diverse leadership. They end up with a more diverse workplace because they are intentional, they are measuring, they are not shy about the fact that this is an important goal. And they're not shy about sharing where they've done well and where they haven't. You know, at Shipman, electing a woman of color sends a message to our employees. It sends a message to our community and to our clients that we see leadership differently, that we welcome inclusion as opposed to a culture of exclusion. It tells, everyone, right, all of our stakeholders, that we value different perspectives, as Marie said, that we value different ideas. And the benefit for our employees, I think there are several, but the benefit for our employees is, in addition to seeing my co-managing partners who look the part, right? They are older, don't tell them I said that. They are older white men. They look the part of a law firm leader. And now our employees and our clients and our community also see a law firm leader that looks like me. They hear my voice at the head of the table. They see how I lead and how I am steering the strategic direction of the firm. That in itself has changed the trajectory of our firm because I am in the room as Marie is. I am helping to shape the firm. And so for our employees, I'll tell you, this is the last piece I'll mention. I get notes still from our employees of color and from women cheering me on, after they've heard me speak or after we've had an interaction. And it fills me up, it really fills me up because it makes me feel like we're doing the right thing for the right reasons and that we are doing important work. It tells me that it's meaningful. And as I said, it means a lot to me. Every note that I get, I keep. And I can't think of doing it any other way.
Thank you for that, Leander. Some things that you touched on that really kind of stick with me is this idea that to be able to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, we gotta be able to also understand those different cultures and that those different, both the feminine culture, ethnic culture, tradition. Because I remember when I first started working that the idea to get to success was to basically transform yourself into a man, and a man of the mainstream culture. And as we have gone through these last years, the value of diversity is that we embrace who we are in all our different areas and what we bring to the table to the companies. So with that, Marie, both of you and Leander are Black women and senior leaders and lawyers. As a trailblazer, what is your advice for women wanting to advance their careers?
So I'm first going to take a step back, and I want to bring up what you just said about culture. One of the things that we have been doing at Raytheon Technologies is making sure that in our leadership training that we're including inclusive culture, because that is an expectation out of all of our leaders, that they be inclusive. And that they really be empathetic and really put themselves in the shoes of others. And so that is something that, we look for in our leaders. It aligns with our values. And that really does help to drive us towards transformation, change, and building the culture of the future. To your question on, for me being a Black woman, and how I got to where I was, I have to tell you, I think Leander she hit it on the nail earlier when she talked about mentorship and sponsorship. And I was fortunate enough, I've been in, corporate America for 20 years. I'm also an attorney as well. And there have been so many times that I've that I was in the room and I was either the only woman or the only person of color. And if it wasn't for some of the mentors or the sponsors, some of them did not look like me, but who were there for me, quite frankly, who early on in my career, I could, I was fortunate to have, people I could either call or early on have people who, stood up for me, or if there was a situation where, I, felt uncomfortable or couldn't speak up. They were, the ones reaching out saying, what do you think? And I think that's so important for all of us that, when we get in these positions and when we have that seat at the table, that we go back and we lift as we climb, and we make sure that, when we have that seat at the table, that we are also doing mentoring and sponsoring. And I think so for my call to action to you all, especially today, as you are navigating through your career and you are growing as leaders, is that you also try to find the time to reach back and to uplift others along the way. I just think that is so critical, on this journey. And that, it may not be, someone who looks like you, but it is so important that we go and we do that. The other thing I just want to point out too is, don't be afraid to ask for help. Along the way, sometimes in my career, I also am a mother to a 10-year-old. And at some point, there had been, some challenges that I faced. And what I would say is, don't be afraid to ask for help. I can tell you that, my organization, we are 100% committed to making sure that we are growing and having an environment that is an inclusive, fostering environment for women and people of color, because we know we want to grow our pipeline. We want to make sure that our leadership and our pipeline to those higher senior levels, that it is reflective of the world that we live in. And so, what I would also say is don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it. I think, right now we have a really unique opportunity in corporate America, and just a unique opportunity in society right now, where we're now leaning in and having those courageous conversations. We're now using terms that we may not have used before. And we're also, I think, in an environment now where people can really truly be their authentic selves as well. So I just leave it with you all to say, please, when you get to these positions and as you are moving your way up, please, being empathetic, but also making sure you're reaching back and uplifting others on that journey as well.
Thank you. I definitely, I can really relate to a lot of what you mentioned. So, Leander, you're also an incredible role model. So what would be your advice for women in all stages of their career that are watching this program?
Well, can I just say ditto to what Marie just said? I would say, making sure that you are reaching back and lifting another woman, someone who is learning and just starting, someone who's having a hard time. It sounds like Marie and I have had a very similar experience. When we were having those hard times, there were people who reached out and helped. And I would also say, to know yourself. It's rule number one, right? That's
what I'm going.
And be authentic, because it makes it so much easier, frankly, to show up as yourself. Then you're not confused about how you're supposed to act in a certain situation. And so for me, I show up just like this. I'm a Black woman, right? And I show up that way every day, and all that means, right? Sometimes with curly hair, sometimes with not, sometimes with different hairstyles, sometimes with not. And I make sure that I feel connected to myself, especially when I am afraid, because my next tip is to do it afraid, right? There are a lot of people who are perhaps mediocre and doing really amazing things because they did it afraid. And I think you should also feel that you've been trained, that you know how to do certain things, that you know what you can do, you know where there might be room for improvement, but that you should do it afraid anyway. I would add that it is important to be self-determinative. That means that, you know, there are lots of things in our lives, professionally and personally, that are outside of our control. And, but there is something that you can control, your reaction, right? I know I can control my reaction to anything that comes my way, even when it's unexpected, even when it's painful, that I'm the person who is going to be responsible for myself. And that attitude helps me also have a lot of agency in my decision-making, right? Because I realize that I'm not willing to concede power over myself and my decisions to someone else. Right? Now, that's not the same thing as the fact that I control everything, because I can't. But I feel as if I always have a choice. And sometimes the choices are not appealing. Sometimes the choice is to stay in a role or in a position longer than you feel that it is serving you. But if the alternative is to be unemployed and you have other responsibilities in your life and that's not an option, it is okay to make the choice to stay until you have the next opportunity that you're looking for. You know, I think sometimes women feel closed off from choice and decision-making and agency. And I think that is an important characteristic of kind of progressing and overcoming some of the challenges that we face. The one last thing I'd add is that failure is part of the journey. We have a mantra in our house. I have a 14-year-old daughter, but when she was 6, she would get very upset about losing. And if you have little kids, you know what that looks like. And she was a sore loser. And I told her then, and my husband and I told her, you know, that losing is part of life, and you have to figure out how you respond to it. We did develop a mantra, and I think I got it off the internet. So there's that, getting your resources, that you either win or you learn, right? So that way it is we win or we figure out what we learned from the fact that we did not win. And that has been instructive as well, because it allows me to not fear the failure, or not feel like I can't overcome it, right? I'm always looking at what I can learn. And I encourage my daughter to do the same thing. You know, in our house, I made sure that I never let her win, right? Because I figured you might as well learn how to lose at home. And I'm uber competitive. And I also don't like to lose. So I made sure that she is the kind of person who's willing to take risks, who's willing to play, even when she might lose. And how she can get better. So I think that is a good tip. And then I think, what's the worst that can happen? That you learn from the experience, right? So it really is almost never something you can't recover from. And then my final, I said final, but this is my final. Welcome those people who underestimate you. I feel like if I'm underestimated or Marie is underestimated, we've already won, right? Because we're prepared. And the other person has underestimated us, so they're not prepared. And so that gives me an incredible advantage because I know myself, I'm authentic to myself. I feel in control of my decisions. I feel like I'm the person controlling my life. And if I am underestimated, that's on them, not on me. And so I would give that tip to any woman, any person who is in a space where they're the only one, that they're in a room where they are questioned because of what they look like or underestimated because of what they look like. It's already won. So that's it. Those are my tips.
Well, thank you. And I know we could talk about this topic for much longer, but I'm sure our audience wants to get some advice and some questions in. So the first thing that we have for Marie is, have you encountered any initial internal or external hurdles on your work at Raytheon?
That's a good question. For me, I think, and I wouldn't call it a hurdle, I really would call it an opportunity. I think it's making sure that everyone feels included on the journey, or that everyone has an ownership stake in this journey, and pushing for the culture that we want, that this is not owned by me, it's not owned by our leaders, but it's owned by all of us, all of the people, all of our team members, that, and really for us to drive change and for us to have a diverse, inclusive culture, it starts with every one of us. So that means as leaders, we have to be accountable. That means that when we see actions, we have to speak up. We can't just sit down and sit by, and not say anything, that we have to speak up.
No.
And I think as we go on this journey, we have to make sure that we know that all of us as team members are driving the change that we want to ultimately transform and be that inclusive culture of belonging, where we work, grow, and belong.
Thanks. And for Leander, what are some of the philanthropic or community engagements that the firm is doing or getting involved in to advance marginalized individuals?
Oh, that's a great question. We, a number of years ago, started a program where we tutor at the Wish School. And those students come into our law firm every Thursday, pre-pandemic. We're looking forward to doing it again when we're all back in the office. And that was an opportunity for us to work with children in the Hartford area, who may not have ever been in a law firm, who had maybe never been around lawyers, and who, were learning whatever it is they were doing. And I remember participating in that at the start of my career. That is a long-standing, I believe, over 2 decades worth of running that program. We are also a signature sponsor for the Boys and Girls Club in Hartford, and committed $250,000 to the Boys and Girls Club 2 years ago for our centennial, which was, we were 100 years old. And that was the way we thought we wanted to contribute to our community. With respect to, those are 2 examples, but we also encourage our lawyers to be involved on the boards of community organizations throughout the state and in Washington, D.C. We think it's important for our lawyers to participate in the communities that we serve. We push our pro bono opportunities and actually give billable hour credit for 150 hours of billable hour credit for those who are participating in pro bono work to serve underrepresented communities. This year, we are focusing on combining our diversity, equity, and inclusion committee work with our pro bono committee work, because we find that there is a lot of synergy there. So, there are tons of things that we do. And again, we encourage our employees, our lawyers, to make sure that they have a foot and a hand in our communities, whether that's in Hartford or Stamford or Washington, D.C. and New York.
So a final question for both. What is the one piece of advice that you will share with your younger selves, given where you are now in your career?
You want to take it first, Marie, or I can take it first? Okay. It's going to be okay. That's my youngest advice, my best advice. I think, when I was younger, I just wasn't sure. I could not have seen where I am now. And I think the advice that I would tell her is that it's going to be okay, and that you have to trust yourself, trust that it's going to be okay.
Marie?
I think my advice for my younger self would be, your career trajectory in your life may not be as linear as you think. There are going to be some obstacles, there'll be some challenges, there'll be some opportunities. And, for me, I went to school to practice law. But I initially took a different path, and one that I'm very passionate about. So I would say, don't go on that linear path. There are going to be opportunities that may come your way. And I think the other one is, don't be afraid to take a risk. That risk may benefit you from, learning more about yourself And it may enable you to really use that as an opportunity to really know what your strengths are and also areas that you can work on. And then I think the last piece of advice I would have given my younger self is know your power. You have a lot more power than you think. So know your power would be the last piece of advice.
Well, thank you. Marie and Leander, any closing thoughts?
No, I've really appreciated the opportunity to talk today with Marie, who is phenomenal and I'm sure doing really amazing work. So it's been great to get to know you better. And thank you very much, Beatrice. You know, I've like I said, I've enjoyed it and I hope it's helpful. I hope to see many of you in downtown Hartford when the world opens up for real.
Marie?
Leander, it has been truly an honor to have this conversation with you. You are truly amazing, and you really are a trailblazer using your platform for good and to really make change. And Beatrice, I just want to say thank you to the work that CBIA is doing, and even having this discussion. I think that this is needed. And I also want to say to everyone out there who's watching this that you all are trailblazers, and that I hope each and every one of you, you use the platform and you use your voice to really, any work that you're doing, any career, to really do it with purpose in everything that you do, because, we are all change agents, and any little impact that we make can have true systemic generational impact. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what we all want to do, to make this a better world, especially for future generations and for our children. So thank you for having, these courageous conversations. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
No, thank you to both of you. This has been so awesome. I think what I took from the whole day is this idea of courage, correct? Courage from a personal level, courage to mentor others, courage to encourage communities, and definitely courage for corporations to be part of that change. So thank you very much. You definitely have addressed today what is a critical conversation that we must continue in the workplace and beyond. It is so important that we align the goals of business with the goals of communities and of society as a whole. Thank you so much for your time.